What is up everyone, Movie back again with another video, and today is going to be my end of month vlog for March 2023 where I go over all the movies and TV shows that I watched in the past 30 or so days. Now some of these are on Blu-ray, some of them are cinema releases, and we do have a couple of TV shows in there, so let's just get into it now with the first thing that I watched in March, and that is Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. Now, this is a film that has always intrigued me just because of the movie poster, especially this one that Arrow has done. And I was meant to pick it up a while ago and I just didn't. And then I seen my friend Jason from Sinister Cinema over on Facebook talk about this movie. And it kind of reminded me that I hadn't watched it yet. And I seen that it was on Shudder. And I give it a go and I really, really enjoyed it and decided to pick up the Blu-ray. I'm glad to own this in the collection now. This is basically about this guy called Eric, who is, I think he's killed somehow in the house, and I think a shopping mall is built on top of the house, and his girlfriend thinks he's dead, but he is kind of just in the mall there, killing people off, and he kind of wants her back. You know, he wants his old flame back, basically. It was a fun movie. It's cheesy as hell. It's not very well made, not very well acted, but I kind of grew up with these movies, and you've got to know that going in, I suppose. There's lots of 80s and 70s horror movies like this, isn't there? We've all seen at least one of them, and this one is about on that level. But I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not amazing or anything, but it's a good time, and I would watch this again. So that is Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. Next up, I watched Michael B. Jordan's directional debut, Creed 3, set in the Rocky universe. Now, I do really enjoy the first two Creed movies, not as much as the Rocky films, to be honest, although overall they are probably better made. There's just some more rewatchable ones in the Rocky franchise for me, especially 3 and 4, but I did enjoy Creed 1 and 2. And I do feel like this may be the worst of the three, but it was still a pretty good movie. This sees Creed going up an old friend who's been in prison for like 20 years, played by Jonathan Majors, and he kind of wants, he's got a chip on his shoulder really of the past, and them two have got a bit of a history there, and the movie delves back and forth between flashbacks of what happened when they were kids to the now, which isn't something the Rocky franchise has kind of done before, which I thought there was a nice take. There was a lot of, you know, directional choices that Michael B. Jordan made here that sat with me, and some of them didn't, especially in the final fight scene where the fight kind of flashes by because of an artistic style he went for. You know the movie, if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I mean there. That really didn't work for me at all, but I did like Jonathan Majors as like the villain, if you like, of this film. I thought he was really good, brought something, you know, fresh to the opponents that Creed faced. I wasn't a big fan of Victor Drago in the last movie, so this was a step up, if you like. Yeah, overall, just a good boxing movie, but definitely the weakest out of the three Creeds, but overall, not bad. Next up, I watched John Carpenter's classic, Assault on Precinct 13. I did a lot of things about this movie before, and yeah, it was a good time. This is basically about this guy who's getting chased by this gang of criminals. These criminals have kind of took over the town, basically, and this guy runs into this police station, but it's only like half full of cops because I think they're kind of in the middle of moving to another police station, so there's only so many cops there, and it's about these criminals trying to break in and get this guy, and it involves a tense shootout between the two. But there was a moment in this film about 30 minutes in that really did horrify me. Didn't see it coming whatsoever. It's a bit of a shocking moment, really. I really liked the John Carpenter score in this one, especially the parts where this gang are just sort of floating around the streets ready to take pot shots at random people, and the John Carpenter scores there. Yeah, it wasn't a bad film. I kind of want to watch the remake now, the more modern one with Samuel L. Jackson in, just to see how it compares. But I do think this is a good movie. Not John Carpenter's best by any means, but you know, definitely a good entry into his filmography. That is Assault on Precinct 13. Next up, I decided to watch the entire franchise of John Wick, because we did have John Wick 4 coming out this month, which I will talk about in just a minute. But I watched John Wick last month, even though that's the only one I had seen. I rewatched it, and I finally got to John Wick 2. I was kind of saving these movies for the build-up to John Wick 4. Yeah, another great entry into the franchise. It's a solid series. Not a bad movie in this. I'll go into 3 and 4 in a minute, but this was a great sequel to the first film. Really thought this had a strong villain in there who kind of tricks John Wick into doing something for him and then turning everyone against him, and it leads to all sorts of one big mess for John Wick towards the end of the movie. But some great fight scenes once again, very similar to the first film, although I do think there was a little bit less story here. Some good characters thrown in, like more assassins and stuff. I do like the way these films build on bringing new characters in each series. There's like these new assassins that come in all the time, and yeah, just expanded on the John Wick universe there. So yeah, John Wick 2, very solid film. Looked great on 4K as well. Next up, I watched the original Scarface. Now, I'm a big fan of Scarface from 1983, even though I do think it's slightly overrated. I was part of that kind of cult of teenage kids, just watching Scarface constantly when I was in school and stuff. And it's a solid movie. Now, this is still a good film. It's not as good as the 1983 one starring Al Pacino, but for the time when this was made and stuff, it's done efficiently. I thought Paul Mooney was really good. As I think his name's something else in it. Is it Tony Camote or Tony Camonte in this movie instead of Tony Montana? Yeah, he's there to grasp the top. It's the same story, really. I really enjoyed seeing the similarities in some scenes, and some things they do at the start of the movie in this one might be towards the end of the 1983 one, and vice versa and stuff. But I really like the direction by Howard Hawks in this one as well. You just tell his heart and soul has gone into this. And there was at the start of the movie, it said, "This is my answer to the problem we've got in America here and the American government. And if you want to take a stand, then you need to stop this on the streets." And I was like, that's a very strange thing for the start of the movie, this big political statement there. But overall, a good film, and like I said, Paul Mooney with a good performance in this as Tony Camonte. I do recommend it if you're a fan of the 1983 film. And we've also got a new one coming out from the director from Bones and All. I forgot his name there. Is it Luca Guadagnino or something? Can't wait to see how that one pans out. So yeah, that is Scarface, the original from 1930? 1930. Might be 1931. But it's definitely a 30s movie anyway. Very early 30s movie. I do recommend it if you like the 1983 film. So that is Scarface. Next up, I caught up to my Star Wars shows with the Mandalorian Season 3 out this month, which I am currently watching. Probably talk about that more next month. And that is Andor. Very strange one, this, because some episodes of this for me were 10 out of 10, easy. Some of the best Star Wars episodes I've seen in any of these shows, and some of them were kind of slow, dragged, and just weren't for me, basically. Now, what I'll say is the character of Cassian Andor was great. Loved him. He's a great protagonist to get behind. Really interesting take on the Star Wars universe. It's not all fun and games here. It's more of a serious adult approach, a much more serious tone. And there's a lot of political stuff going on here with mayors and governments of different planets and stuff. And that's where the show kind of lost me when it was doing all that stuff. I kind of just weren't interested in that. I'm not really big on political movies anyway, and especially when it's Star Wars and the Star Wars lore, I just was kind of getting lost at times a little bit there. But when it was Cassian Andor just doing these missions and fighting and rebelling and going into these bases and shit, that's where it had me. And at one point he goes to this, honestly, one of the most depressing prison and jail locations I've ever seen in any movie or TV show ever. And that was the height of the show. Towards the end there, where he's in there for about 3 or 4 episodes with all these new characters, that was the height of the show for me. And it was just so, you just wanted them to get out of this place, basically. But they really done a good job of making this feel like just a horrible place to be, and you just don't want to be there. So that was the height of the show for me. It did end okay-ish, I suppose, but overall, it's not my favourite Star Wars show. I know a lot of people say it is for them, but for me, it's not. However, I did have a good time with it, and I do think these Star Wars shows are consistently good. The Mandalorian got off to a good start as well. I haven't seen a bad Star Wars show, in my opinion, and this was no exception. So I think we're getting an Andor 2. I'll be right up for that one. But please just bring less political stuff and more Andor if you can. Thanks. So that is Andor. Next up, I watched Women Talking because the Oscars was coming, and it was my mission to watch all the Oscar-nominated pictures, and I still haven't seen Triangle of Sadness, and there's another one there I haven't seen, I think. Can't remember what it is, though. It might just be Triangle of Sadness, actually, but Women Talking was one of them. And I thought this movie was okay. It's just not really my type of film. I mean, it was very strong performances in there, great dialogue throughout and stuff, and an interesting concept with this little village where all these women are and they want to escape from and take a stand because these guys are just coming to just rape them whenever they want and stuff like that. But it was just needed that little bit of an extra spark for me. I mean, I was just kind of strolling through the movie with it, and yeah, just like, oh yeah, this is a typical drama. Can I see why it got nominated for Best Picture? I don't know. It's probably one of my lesser favourite nominated Oscar movies, alongside Tar there, which bored the hell out of me. But it was okay. I give it 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which isn't bad. That is Women Talking. Next up is going to be my new release of the month, and it isn't John Wick 4. It is actually Scream 6. Yes, I know, more on John Wick 4 in a minute, but I absolutely love this movie. I think this is one of the strongest horror franchises out there, and this only added to that. For the first hour of this film, I thought it was going to be my favourite alongside the original, and it's still one of my favourite sequels, but not quite there. However, the second half of the movie did go downhill a little bit, but not to the point where I didn't like it or anything. It just wasn't as strong as the first half. However, I had a total blast with this new Ghostface character and how sinister he was, and there's more gore there. There was a moment in a store, in a local convenience store, which was one of my favourite Scream movies in the entire franchise. I loved it. So happy I didn't watch the trailer going into this, because that just would have totally ruined it for me. Why do they show so much in these trailers? I enjoy the new cast of characters. I get to know them a lot more than I did in Scream 5 here, because we've spent 2 movies with them now, and I am very happy for these characters going forward. Melissa Barrera is the strong point for me, and Mindy as well is another great character. She's like the Randy of the group now, explaining all the horror rules and stuff like that. Jenna Ortega again, it's a strong core 4, as they're called in this movie. Some great kill scenes in this. I absolutely love the dialogue from Ghostface in all these films, but it was so on point here. I was just laughing my ass off when he was on the phone with his little dark comedy and stuff. I had such a good time with Scream 6. And for someone who didn't absolutely love Scream 5, I thought it was a solid movie, but not as hyped on it as everyone else was. This was better for me, and I kind of didn't expect that. So, yeah, one of my favourites in the franchise. If you must know, it's Scream, then Scream 4, then this one. That's my top 3 of the Scream franchise there now. So, can't wait to watch this one again on 4K. It was such a fun time. So, yeah, that is Scream 6, my new release of the month. And at this moment in time, it's still my #1 movie of 2023. Next up, I finished The Last of Us. I think everyone was watching this show, weren't they? Whether you played the game or not. And yeah, this was a solid TV video game adaptation. It was done perfectly, to be honest. Bar one thing, a lot of people are saying there should have been more clickers and stuff in there, and I do agree with that. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, no. Yeah, I think we just needed a little bit more of that, mainly for newcomers, to just see more of this world that they are inhabited in. I mean, I fully got it because I'd played the game, but it was more like I spoke to my mum, and she absolutely loved the show, but she's never played this game ever. And she said the same thing. Yeah, she's just like, sometimes I forgot that this world is inhabited by these clickers and stuff. So yeah, apart from that though, it was perfection. The characters were great. Bella Ramsey, at first, I was kind of like, I'm not too sure about her as Ellie, but as the show go on, I think I ended up liking her a little bit better than Joel. She was just such an awesome character. Episode 8 was the best episode for me, involving the character David. Absolutely loved that one. And there was really some tense moments, and I just loved watching these moments from the game put onto the screen there. It totally worked. And I can't wait for The Last of Us Season 2. solid show. Is it a 10? It's touching. It's touching. Probably pick this up on 4K at some point. But can't wait to see The Last of Us 2 video game put onto screen here. It's going to be very, very interesting to see the character of Abby on screen here. I'm going to wonder who plays her and all the backlash that newcomers might get, that gamers had from that. It's going to be interesting. My heart goes out to whoever plays Abby, because that poor actress who done the voice of her in The Last of Us 2 is still getting hate mail today. So it'll be interesting to see the audience reception of that one. So that is The Last of Us, the TV show. Next up, we have The Dark Knight Returns Part 1. Kind of going through all these Batman movies, maybe just one a month, because I've bought quite a few of these now, and they're just very easy watches, aren't they? This is about Bruce Wayne, who has been retired for years, and he's been retired for 10 years, I think, so he's like an old man in this, like in his 60s or something, or his 50s. Not an old man, but, you know, he's older. And he comes out of retirement because there's this gang running around called the Mutants, and they're just tearing shit up. I mean, they're the biggest threat Gotham's ever had. They're kind of taking over the city, and he feels like he's got to do this. And it was really interesting to see all these characters as older, you know, the older versions of themselves. Like Jim Gordon is pushing 70 and he's on the brink of retirement, and there's this new commissioner coming in. I thought the movie done that really well. It was good. Most of these are 7 out of 10 movies for me, and this was kind of the same. But I also watched The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. It's kind of hard to say which one I preferred. But this one plays more on the Joker, my favourite Batman villain, and that was my favourite part of the entire 2-part thing, if you like, even though it's only about a quarter of the segment of the whole thing. That was the best part. The second half of this one kind of goes a little bit downhill for me when there's like this war going on with the Soviets and stuff, and Superman sort of comes into it. There's a lot of Batman vs Superman vibes in this one. I think they were based off the same comic or something, but glad to have finally watched these. I've owned these for a while now, and I know there's a new one called Batman the Doom that comes to Gotham. I'll be watching that definitely this year, because it's a 2023 film. Might pick that up very soon. But yeah, overall, these two, not bad. Next up, I watched 65, the new dinosaur movie starring Adam Driver. Now, I will go as far to say that so far I haven't watched a bad 2023 movie, but this is definitely on the lower end of my ranking so far. It wasn't very good, but it was definitely watchable. This sees Adam Driver, 65 million years ago, from another planet, crash land onto Earth, and we all know it was inhabited by dinosaurs then, wasn't it? He's got this young girl with him. And they're basically the main two characters of the entire film. Very, very short movie. It's only about 90 minutes long. It flew by. I say short movie. That's what the standard was years ago, wasn't it? But there you go. My biggest problem with this movie was that the dinosaurs were not the biggest threat of Earth. It was more like these sinking sand pits and collapsible caves that seem to be the big danger zones for these two characters, trying to get to the top of this mountain where they can escape from the Earth, basically. The dinosaurs looked good, but they just didn't do much with them. It was kind of a very dense movie, and a film that involves all these dinosaurs shouldn't be like this. It should be much more exciting, many more action set pieces set up there. But yeah, it was just Adam Driver going to the top of this mountain with a few dinosaurs around him, basically. There was a moment as well, it was total cringe. There's about a 2-minute segment where it throws a lot of comedy in with Adam Driver and this young girl, and I did not laugh once. And then there's no comedy for the rest of the film. It was just so out of place. Yeah, probably wait for this one to come to Netflix or something. Like I said, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't very good either. Next up, I'm going to show you my older release of the month, and that is John Wick 3 Parabellum. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed this just a little tiny bit more than John Wick 2. If I'd done a ranking of these, which I was meant to do, I'm sorry I didn't get round to that. The ship has probably sailed for that now anyway. I would put this over 2 just for this action in this. Arguably 2 has a slightly better story, even though the story isn't as good as 1. But the action set pieces in this are just unbelievable. There's a moment in a knife store. Well, it's a tool store basically, and it's probably my favourite fight scene from the entire franchise, including John Wick 4 there. It was awesome, and the end of that scene was great, where John Wick just threw an axe at this guy's head. It was unbelievable to watch. But he's got so many people after him in this movie. There's like a 15 million price tag on his head and stuff, and all the assassins are out for him. Really, really enjoyed this one. I love the cinematography in these films as well. There's like this, I don't know if it's a filter or colour palette, whatever you want to call it, on these films that really does work for it and just gives it this awesome vibe, this cool looking vibe. And they all follow that path, basically. Yeah, decent movie. I really, really enjoyed this one. Is it my favourite of the franchise? Probably. I'd say it is, yeah. Including 4. So that is John Wick 3, Parabellum. Next up, I watched Shazam because I'd never seen this film before, and we had Shazam Fury of the Gods coming out, which I was meant to see by now, but I still haven't seen it. Sometimes it's hard to get your young lad minded for a couple of hours. We've got great family who always mind them, but it just hasn't had the right time where we can get them minded at the same time. My wife's mother usually watches them all the time, and she's had a knee replacement at the minute, so we can't really ask her and stuff. So I'll get round to Shazam Fury of the Gods at a certain point. If I've got away for the 4K, so be it. But that is Shazam, and I enjoyed this movie. It's a typical comic book film. No surprises really thrown in there or anything like that. I like the whole family dynamic where they're all orphans, and he is one as well. And I liked all the connection he had with the family, and the fact that he's got this superpower where he's the best version of himself, and it makes him this adult, even though he's a kid. And he's having little kid squabbles while he's an adult and stuff. That was fun. Mark Strong was a great villain in this. I don't know what the general consensus of him as a villain is in this movie, but I really enjoyed him. He was my favourite part of the film when he was on screen as Thad. Overall, a decent enough comic book film. I'm looking forward to Shazam Fury of the Gods, even though I haven't heard the greatest things, but that's comic book movies these days just don't get the greatest of receptions, do they? I mean, I understand if people are oversaturated with them. That's fine. That's your problem. Not your problem, your opinion, sorry. But I just think some of the scores that people give are very, very harsh, like 0.5 and 1 stars to them. I don't think they're that bad, no matter how fatigued you are. But anyway, yeah, a good DC film, and it's kind of sad because I don't think this character is going to be extended into James Gunn's new revamp, but we'll have to wait and see what he does there. But yes, Shazam, not a bad movie at all. Next up is a film that all my mates had watched when we were teenagers, and I felt like I was the only one who hadn't seen this movie, and that is Universal Soldier. Very, very sorry about these stickers. I really need to get them off. I'm terrified. I can see there it's kind of not coming off, so I'm going to have to get some lighter fuel on there or something. But I finally sat down and watched Universal Soldier, and you know what? I really enjoyed this film. I was just watching it going, man, I would have loved this back in the day. It just has everything I want in an action movie and stuff, and it was kind of like a horror film at times. I wouldn't say full-on horror, but there was horror elements there. Dolph Lundgren just hunting these people down and stuff. It was kind of creepy at times, I thought. Really, really interesting concept. These are Vietnam War veterans, and their bodies have been preserved to be these future soldiers. And I thought this was all taking place in like 2150 or something, but it is actually kind of in the present day, where these soldiers are like enhanced and stuff. And it really did work. Enjoyed Jean-Claude Van Damme in this as well. So yeah, it's a great action movie from the 1992, I believe. I think it's 92. Apologies if it's not. But yeah, I enjoyed this, and I would definitely watch it again. I've heard there's like 6 of these movies now, and a couple of them are meant to be quite good. So I'm going to check them ones out with Jean-Claude Van Damme in. I don't know about 2 and 3, but I think he's in like 4 and 6 or something. So yeah, we'll see. I'll try and watch them as well soon. But that is Universal Soldier on 4K. Look great on 4K as well. So do recommend picking that up for the collection if you're a fan. Yeah. Enjoyed that one. Next up, I watched The Boston Strangler on Disney Plus. And I love a good true crime movie, and I had a good time with this one as well. This follows Keira Knightley as this journalist who's trying to track this guy down who's going around killing women, basically, in the 60s, I believe. Was it the 60s? Might have been the 50s. Love the whole cinematography of this. I like it when these movies take place in these days, and you know, all the older outfits and older looking houses and stuff. It works for me. It's just something I like to watch. This had a mixture of She Said and Zodiac put together there. I did enjoy this movie a little bit more than She Said, even though it's not a sexual crime they're looking for. It's more of a murderous crime. I enjoyed this one a little bit more. I've heard some bad reviews for this and stuff, but I kind of got on board with it. I was invested from start to finish. I kind of wish it had a better ending, but then they'll be rewriting history, wouldn't they? So overall, if you like a true crime movie, I do recommend this. That is The Boston Strangler. Next up is another cinema release, and that is John Wick Chapter 4. I'd heard 10 out of 10 and everything from IGN, people calling this a masterpiece. And I can kind of see why. I just don't think it hit me as much as other people. But I would rate all of this franchise at least an 8 out of 10 for each movie. So that is not bad at all. Like I said, if I was ranking this franchise, there'd be nitpicks of where they would go, you know, between first and fourth. I'm looking forward to watching this again, though. The 3-hour runtime, I kind of felt it at the cinema. I was very tired that day as well, which did not help matters. So I do want to watch this again. I'll probably wait for the 4K. But there was some great action scenes here, some of them going on for a very long time, but it worked. Good story going on for John Wick there. Probably more of a story in this one compared to 2 and 3. So on par with 1 and 4. I do think they have the best stories, 1 and 4, the bookends of this franchise. Although I heard the John Wick Chapter 5 is coming. Donnie Yen was a great character in this as this like blind assassin. And I think this movie does the best job of bringing these new characters in. Scott Adkins was fucking awesome in this movie. He was so funny, but acted so well as well. I can't remember the guy's name he plays in this movie, but that was the best scene of the entire film for me. So yeah, it is a very good action film. But I want to watch it again to make my full mind up on it there. But I do recommend it if you like the other 3. That is John Wick Chapter 4. Now, for some of you who watch this channel regularly, you'll know that I've been trying to watch all the Arnold Schwarzenegger films, and it's my mission to watch them all by the end of the year. And I added another one to my watch list there, and I finally watched it. And that is Twins, one of his more comedic roles with him and Danny DeVito as these long-lost twins, because they were like this experiment in a lab or something. And I really enjoyed this movie. It got better the more it went on. The chemistry between these two totally worked. Arnold's like the nicest guy in the world, and Danny DeVito is this like little sleazeball. They're the total opposites, and they go on like this road trip together to 1, find their mum, and 2, to kind of make this deal where they're gonna be rich, basically. And they take their 2 girlfriends with them as well, which was fun. Kelly Preston looked amazing in this movie. Rest in peace. She did, though. She looked absolutely stunning in this movie. I had a really good time with it. Just a fun movie. And I'm finally glad to own this on Blu-ray. This will be in my next Blu-ray pickup video. But yeah, really happy to have finally seen this. Another one like Universal Soldier, where everyone had seen it except me, basically. So that is Twins. Next up, I watched Champions. Now, this was one of the funniest films I have seen in a very long time. This follows Woody Harrelson as this basketball coach, and he crashes into this police car when he's drunk, and he can either go to jail or do community service. And that community service involves teaching this basketball team of these kids with disabilities and Down syndrome. And he thinks it's going to be such a hard task because he's like this major basketball coach who gets to the nitty gritty, and he's very serious about it. And these kids just kind of want to have fun, basically. But oh my God, man, the connection he has and grows with these kids is awesome. The kids in this movie are just so funny. All the one-liners they come out with, the jokes. Oh man, I was in the hysterics in the cinema. And I think the movie does such a good job of sort of showing you that these kids who have learning problems and disabilities and, you know, Down syndrome and stuff, they've got personalities like us all, and people, ignorant people, like the movie says itself, should never look down on these people because they were just a joy to be around. I absolutely loved them. They all each had their own personalities. They were great characters, and I just didn't want the movie to end. I hope they make Champions 2 with the same characters. Honestly, guys, this was so far the funniest movie I've seen this year, but it was the funniest movie I've seen in a long time. I just highly recommend it. I really do. So the top three of the year for me are John Wick 4, Scream 6, and this. They're in my top three. So that's how highly I rated the film. Definitely worth a watch, whether it's at the cinema this month, when it comes to Scream, and just keep your eye out for it. Honestly, you will have a great time. And that is Champions. Next up, I watched a film that I was quite highly anticipating over on Apple TV, and that is Tetris. This came out on the last day of the month, but it's not the last pick here, don't worry. Taron Egerton plays this guy who wants to sell the game of Tetris to Nintendo and shit like that, and there's lots of contractual obligations getting in the way, and who owns the rights to the game, and there's this big involvement with Russia, and the movie just goes so much bigger than it should. And you know what? I did have a good time with this. I thought this was a good movie. Although I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, it's still a solid film. Taron Egerton was so good in this, showing his diversity as an actor, really, these different roles. You wouldn't think it's the same guy out the Kingsman, put it that way, as this businessman in this one. Kind of had the feelings of The Founder and The Social Network. It's that type of story, really. But I really liked some of the moments where it was turning into a video game, like it was saying character 1, and it'd show you in pixelated form, and it'd introduce Taron Egerton, and then we'd get to like halfway through the movie and we'd be on level 3 there. It was good when it done that, and there was this moment where there was a car chase going on and the car was hitting into other cars, but it turned into these Tetris blocks as it hit the other cars. I thought that was a cool little directional way to go. But my favourite part of the entire movie was the soundtrack. I mean, they mixed the Tetris theme tune there. It's like this dance song, and it was awesome. The end credits, man, I just watched them. I just sat there and watched them because the music was so good. So yeah, not a bad movie at all. Quite an interesting story, although not the most interesting story out there, but it is interesting enough. I do recommend it if you're a video gamer or you just want to know how Tetris come about. So that is Tetris. And last up, after Tetris, I watched the final episode of Cuphead Season 3 over on Netflix. This is such an underrated show, man. It's absolutely brilliant. If you like animation and comedy, this will go together perfectly, whether you're young or old. It's great. It's another video game, sort of adaptation there. I just love the animation on this. It's so old school. It's like a 1930s cartoon. Voice work is spot on. The characters are great. Now, this wasn't as strong as season 2 or 1, but it's still a solid season. I definitely recommend this on Netflix. I do. They're only like 15-minute episodes. And I really hope Netflix give us a season 4 of this, because I just get so much enjoyment out of Cuphead. And yeah, it's an interesting show, put it that way. So that is Cuphead season 3, sorry. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this video. What do you think of these watches that I got through this month? Is there anything you recommend that I should watch going by what I liked here? Let me know down below. If you want more of these end of month vlogs, they'll be down below in the description as well. Take it all easy guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.